Welcome to Satsuki Bonsai Demystified. I'm your host, Rick Garcia. It's getting cool, it's fall, it's time for fall maintenance with Satsuki azaleas. Join me. Hi there, and welcome to our very first video together, hopefully the first of many to come. I'm so excited I can hardly stand it. It's November, it's fall, it's time to begin working on Satsuki azaleas. This really triggers the first opportunity to begin doing the major work that we need to start doing with Satsuki azaleas. It's going to be a busy time for the next several months. It's only starting right now, and appropriately we're starting with fall maintenance. Now, what does fall maintenance consist of? Well, really it begins with removing old leaves that are no longer necessary. We remove weak shoots. We also get rid of any undesirable branches. But the first question we are probably asking ourselves now is, why do we perform fall maintenance? Well, let's talk about that. Fundamentally, we have two objectives. The first is to create space between the branches. This will allow sunlight to reach the interior regions of the tree, while also facilitating improved air circulation within the canopy. The first step to accomplishing this is to remove old spent leaves. Next, remove any weak or dead shoots and branches. Here we can see a tree prior to performing fall maintenance. There's a lot of old leaves, and it's impossible for the sun's rays to reach the interior of the tree. Here, I've removed a portion of old spent leaves while allowing some to remain so you can observe the before and after appearance side by side. And finally, we can see the tree after completing fall maintenance. Now it's easy to see that sunlight can reach the interior of the tree, and you can imagine that the air will circulate freely. The next step to creating space is to remove any weak or dead shoots and branches. Here we're looking at a different view of the same tree we observed in the previous overhead photos. This is the front view before removing any spent leaves. Also hidden within the canopy are some weak shoots and dead branches. This occurs in all of our Satsuki and is not unexpected. Now, having completed fall maintenance, you can see there's a lot more openness within the canopy. Sunlight will reach the tree's interior branches and air can circulate freely. You'll also notice that the soil surface has been cleaned. This is a great time to explore the benefits of creating space for our Satsuki. By enabling sunlight to penetrate through the tree to the soil surface, it has a net effect of warming the root ball, which encourages the soil to dry. Additionally, improved air circulation complements the effects of sun penetration, further assisting in the drying of the root ball. This is important because in winter, when plant process is slow, Satsuki use less water. By encouraging the soil to dry out, we avoid exposing the root ball to prolonged periods of excessive moisture. Another benefit to creating space is that it helps control the spread of fungal disease. With improved air circulation and the reduction of organic matter which retains moisture, we create a healthier environment that discourages the proliferation of fungal growth. Removing organic matter, by that I mean leaves, also eliminates hiding places for pests and other creepy crawlies. Now we arrive at the second objective in performing fall maintenance on Satsuki azaleas: to remove any new growth that has emerged from undesirable locations. Throughout the yearly growth cycle, healthy Satsuki azaleas generate a prodigious amount of new shoots. Fall offers our first opportunity to make adjustments to this rampant growth. Here we can see a tree that has completed the yearly growth cycle and produced many new shoots. This is exactly what we want. Looking at the canopy, you can see that the leaves have turned color and the soil surface is covered in spent leaves and weeds. Yep, you guessed it. This Satsuki requires fall maintenance, so let's look at that. Now we're looking at the tree after completing fall maintenance. Just as before, you can see that there's plenty of space now for sunlight to penetrate through to the soil surface, and air will readily flow throughout the canopy. Although I did a really bad job at establishing the correct photographic angle to clearly see the soil surface, the surface of the root ball has been cleaned. Take my word on it. When these photos were taken, this tree was early in the development cycle, so I was fairly aggressive in removing branches. My objective the following year was to build foundational branching, so I needed to remove a lot of new growth. This tree is done and ready for winter. What do you think? Now, before we go any further, I think it's valuable to examine the purpose behind our two fall maintenance objectives in a little more detail. And let's start with the second objective first, which is removing undesirable growth. This one's pretty straightforward. Simply put, this helps us to either develop or maintain style. While developing a Satsuki for style, we're establishing a framework of foundational branches that we continue to refine in subsequent years. When maintaining a style, we're preserving the branch structure that's in place and eliminating any new growth that detracts from the desired form. The first objective, which is creating space, it's a little more obscure. One of the characteristics of Satsuki in nature is that they allow their interior branches to die off. What's that, you say? The natural tendency of Satsuki azaleas in the wild is to allow their interior branches to die off? Yes, they do. Let's take a look at this wild Satsuki grown in the countryside of Japan's Bonsai region as an example. Looking closely at the interior of the shrub, you can see long segments of branches that have few or no branches on them. And you'll notice many dead branches perched within this shrub as well. Focusing on the very tips of these branches, you'll see that this is where the new growth is occurring. This happens because Satsuki generates so much growth that the interior regions of the plant are heavily shaded, and there's very little air circulation within the plant canopy. So, in order to maximize exposure, Satsuki continue to extend outwards to capture more sun. The result is smaller interior branches die off and new shoots are not produced within the plant canopy due to the lack of sunlight. So while this growth strategy is suitable for Satsuki in nature, unfortunately it doesn't produce good bonsai. For this reason, we must perform fall maintenance to create space. It helps sunlight penetrate to the interior of the tree and strengthen those small branches throughout the inner canopy. And how about those activities we're performing to create space that we haven't really explored, like removing small weak shoots or pruning out those branches that have died? So let's dwell on those for a moment. Allowing small weak shoots to remain, and I'm defining weak to mean one that does not possess a flower bud, actually impedes the emergence of a new strong shoot. So by removing those small weak shoots, we actually improve the potential for generating larger shoots to replace them. Where dead branches are concerned, if we leave them in place, we can actually enable the spread of decay from that dead branch into the living tissue of the branch from which it emerges. This will weaken the overall branch. So we remove those dead branches to discourage the spread of decay. Let's wrap up our discussion on the value of correctly performing fall maintenance by encapsulating all we've covered into a simple high-level statement. Ultimately, proper fall maintenance bolsters plant strength, especially throughout winter. You may be wondering, how do I know when to start performing fall maintenance? Well, that answer is pretty easy. It's when the leaves start turning color. That's also one of the most frequently asked questions by people that are new to Satsuki azaleas at this time of year. They see their leaves turning yellow or brown when they're getting ready to die, and they're worried that there's a problem with their tree. So they start flooding social media sites asking, is there a problem? Should I be worried about this? And people get a mixture of answers. What they don't realize is this is entirely normal and to be expected, and this happens for all of the Satsuki azaleas that we have. All the leaves except for those at the very tip of the branch, they're all going to fall off. It's going to happen. So as you see, all these leaves are yellow except for this guy there, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So the indicator is when the tree starts to turn color and you get maybe half the branch, 2/3 of the branch is turning color, or the leaves are turning brown, that's the ideal time to start this process. Now, when you actually start working on the trees, which we're going to do in a moment, always work from the top of the tree to the bottom. Top to the bottom. Why? From my perspective, I'm just kind of a lazy guy, and I like to kind of clean as I go. So as I remove trees from the top of the tree and go down, as I work down the tree, I'm kind of cleaning up those leaves that have fallen. If I work from the bottom to the top, as I get to the top, some of these leaves, I'm going to miss them. I'm lazy. And they get caught up in some of the branches. Then you just have to go back in and clean them out. So if you work top to bottom, you're kind of cleaning the tree out in two ways. You're getting rid of the leaves and you're kind of cleaning as you go down. So work top to bottom. So let's talk about these three trees. They're three different sizes. The important thing to know about these, although they're three different sizes, is they're all the same variety. These are all Hinomaru. And this is the distinctive flower this variety is so well known for. Now, the reason I pointed these out is when you look at the trees, you're going to see that the two smaller pots, the leaves in the trees in the smaller pots are starting to turn color. Whereas the largest tree, it's still green. What I wanted to show you with this is it's the same variety, but the smaller plant, the smaller pot size, has influenced the roots. The roots are getting cooler in the smaller pots before they are in the larger pot, which causes the smaller trees to go into dormancy a little bit sooner. I point this out because I want you to have this thought in your mind that any of the maintenance that we do with Satsuki azaleas is completely dependent on the individual tree. We don't want to look at Satsuki azaleas as a whole when we work on them. We don't want to look at them as a variety. We look at them as individuals. And the different pot sizes influence the trees in different ways. In this case, the smaller trees are going into dormancy sooner than the larger trees. So this kind of fits into the discussion of when to begin working on the trees. If you go by leaf color, you're always going to start at the right time. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is this little planting of the small shohin Hinomaru. And I'm going to talk about that with a story. I brought these trees in about 2 years ago in February. And I brought them in for a workshop that I was conducting. I had selected the best trees of the shipment to take to the workshop. And the day before I was scheduled to leave, I was furiously working on getting the remaining trees repotted. I was working, I think it was up until 1 a.m. in the morning. And I was scheduled to leave like at 5 a.m. the next day. I had this group of trees that I had yet to pot, and me being lazy, I couldn't do all of these trees in a single pot. I wouldn't have got any sleep. So I just threw those into one pot, didn't even wire them in, and set them in the pot, and I went and did my thing. So the trees were happy, they were moving along, and then later in the spring, I moved from California to Indiana. Long story short, moving the trees from California to Indiana, we encountered some bumps. This plant, over the many bumps between California and Indiana, it upended 2 of the trees in the pot. Can you tell which trees those are? I asked that because when I got here, I I was worried when it was time to open up the container and see how the trees fared, because I knew there was some big bumps that they'd hit. Sure enough, when I pulled this out, 2 of the trees in there were completely roots exposed. And I was disappointed, but it was not unexpected. So I just took the trees and I kind of worked them back in. Again, they weren't tied in with wires. So that's a lesson. Always wire your trees into your pots. You never know what's going to happen. So I just kind of reset the trees. I put new Hinoma around it and just hoped. And here they are. They were a little bit slow at the end of spring. Summer, they started to pick up again. And then near the end of the year, they just started pushing again. So the reason I wanted to talk about that is to really talk about the resiliency of Satsuki azaleas. Sometimes people may have a preconception that they're a little weak or they're fussy, and they really aren't. The key is to getting these trees healthy, and once you get them healthy, they can snap back from a lot of different circumstances. So, enough with that, let's get to work. The most basic step is to learn how to properly remove a leaf. Do not pull away from the branch tip. Rather, pull towards the tip of the branch. That's right. Also, ensure that you stabilize the branch when pulling any leaves. We'll only do a couple of branches to demonstrate properly removing leaves. Now, the downside to pulling away from the branch tip is that you may tear the tissue connecting the leaf stem to the branch. While a couple of leaves will not present a problem, the cumulative effect may adversely impact branch health. So, let's learn the correct technique and establish good fundamentals from the beginning. In my book, I cover 3 separate methods for removing leaves. So let's take a look at those methods now. And we'll start with the first method, which is using tweezers. I'll use tweezers when working on small trees or tight locations where there are many small branches. It enables a real precise method for getting in and getting exactly those leaves that you want. You don't disturb the branches in the area that way. Now let's look at the second method, which is using our fingers. They say the camera adds pounds. And I think the effect is the same when looking at fingers, because now I look like I've got some pudgy sausage fingers. Normally I would not use my fingers in an area like this because it's small and confined. With shohin or areas that have a lot of little branches, I'll use tweezers. But we're demonstrating the methods. Now let's look at the third technique, which is using scissors. And scissors are good for getting into really tight spaces. Also, you don't necessarily have to worry about stabilizing the branch. There is, however, a downside to using scissors. Anything caught between the scissor blades will be removed, so we must be careful when we're using scissors. Notice that when I enter the canopy with those scissors, the blades are closed, and I do this to avoid accidentally catching other branches. And I'll only open the blades when it's time to cut. We're going to fast forward to working on the main branch. Because removing leaves is pretty much just wash, rinse, and repeat, I'm not going to bore you with watching me remove every leaf that's been removed up to this point. And It does bear repeating that I'm stabilizing the branch while removing leaves. To be honest with you, on a branch like this, I probably would have used my fingers because there's plenty of space between the branches I'm working on. Had I used my fingers, I probably could have done this easily in 25% of the time it took me to use the tweezers. But in the interest of demonstrating the tweezer technique, I decided to use the tweezers throughout the whole main branch example. This is what I do for you folks. Would have been so much quicker, those fingers. Even those big sausage fingers. Now here you'll see that I'm not stabilizing the branch when I'm pulling, but I am pulling parallel to the direction in which the branch grows. You can do this if the branch is strong, but be aware, you run the risk of pulling the branch off. Also, if you pull that branch at an angle to the direction it's growing in, you may break the branch or pulling it off there as well. So when you can, stabilize the branch. Okay, we've removed all of the spent leaves, so we can now turn our attention to removing weak shoots. Fortunately on this tree, there weren't a lot of weak shoots, and I had to look closely to find some. So there you'll see me searching around trying to find those weak shoots. But I don't know about the rest of you. This view really isn't working well for me. I can't see anything. There. That's better. Now we can see things. I'm pointing to several branches here to illustrate the difference between those strong and weak shoots. That's a strong one. That's a weak one there. No bud. There's another weak one. No flower bud there either. That one, see that big fat flower bud? That's a strong shoot. So, that one and that one will now be removed. One gone. Second gone. Good job, Rick. But wait, there's more. There's another weak shoot down there. Let's get rid of that one. Yep, there's another one. That area is now taken care of. Now it's time to look at removing undesirable growth. And here are 3 branches we're going to remove. 3. Let's do it. There, 3 gone. And here I'm pointing to a branch in the back because while it is growing slightly downward, I'm not going to remove it. We'll keep it for now because with a little wire, we might be able to use that in the future, and I'll remove those other branches around it. I want to show you how to remove a weak branch, and we just happen to have one right here. You'll notice it's got 2 weak shoots and a dead stub on it, and they both belong to the same branch. So let's take care of this now. In my book, I mentioned the importance of finding the correct angle of approach to properly remove a branch, and this is an example of that notion. I had to be really careful to get in here to make a good flush cut. And we finish the cut with good old top gin. But you'll see I was a little bit nervous here because I left an ugly blob of top gin there. Oh my goodness, that's embarrassing. Maybe I can fix it. Oh, just get out of there. All right, the weak branch and stub are gone. Now it's time to get rid of a stub that remains from spring pruning. That stub right there resulted from a branch I cut last spring in order to stimulate the growth of those two branches around it. And it worked, thank goodness. So let's remove that stub to prevent the spread of decay. Watch closely. Oh my goodness. I accidentally cut the other branch. Remember I talked about that with the scissors? I just demonstrated that mistake right there. Let's finish with top gin and we'll be done with that. The stub's gone at least. After removing those spent leaves, weak shoots, and branches, it's time to clean the soil surface. I use a second set of tweezers for dirty areas like this. I don't like to get my primary pair of tweezers dirty. So I've got these old guys just for this purpose. So removing the debris from the soil surface is a pretty simple process. You just get rid of anything that's fallen down. I'm just going to work my way around and just remove everything that's fallen out of the canopy. Like removing leaves, this is just wash, rinse, and repeat. And I'll just keep working my way around the pot. Getting all the nooks and crannies. Grab that there. Those. Yep. Those. Oh, missed. Get that. That. Missed. 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 Oh my goodness. That's embarrassing. All right. Enough of the soil surface cleanup. Finally, let's take a look at that group of little shohin Hinomaru after we completed the fall maintenance on these guys. These trees are so much fun, and I can't wait to work on them again next spring. These are going to be a blast. All right, we're done with these two guys. I expect over the next couple of weeks as the weather gets cooler, we'll see the larger Hinomaru change color, and we'll take care of it then. But for the time being, these two are done for the winter. Let's take a closer look at the work that we did on these trees. All right, what are the next steps for these two guys now that they're done? We'll find a place on our benches that receive full sun and let them sit there for the remainder of fall, throughout winter, and in the early portion of spring. So these guys are ready to go. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. We have a lot of things planned this upcoming year. I really hope you stay with us. There's a lot to cover, a lot of great stuff. We're going to follow the progress of these trees and others that are coming up in upcoming videos. So be sure to stay tuned and watch the upcoming episodes. If you like what you're seeing, Please like, comment, subscribe. Let's start getting that subscriber base up and start doing some really good stuff together. I just can't wait to keep going with this. I'm looking forward, I'm excited, and I hope you are too. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.